Okay, today we'll do characteristics of a sound wave. In the previous class, we discussed the longitudinal waves. That means actually sound wave is a longitudinal wave. Whenever we discuss in our previous class. Now today we'll do the characteristics of a sound wave. Clear? Here we'll get the 5 characteristics of sound wave. Number 1, that is the wavelength. Number 2, amplitude. Number 3, frequency. Number 4, time period. And last one, number 5, that is velocity. Clear? Before proceeding this characteristics, first you have to understand wave. We have understood wave. Just look at this figure. This is the wave. That means wave is created by compression and the rarefaction. In the last class we discussed, isn't it? That means we have discussed that this is the wave. Just look at here, this is wave, and the wave will get the high pressure. High pressure region is, we called it compressions, and low pressure region we call rarefactions. No, that means due to this the wave will create it whenever we discussed in the previous class. And for the characteristics also, you have to understand the wave first. Clear? Now here what we have to understand, this compression and rarefactions. Compression is the region of high pressures and the rarefaction is the region of low pressures. Now just look at this. Look at here in the wave. Wave will get the peak and the valley, isn't it? Peak means माथि गएको, that is the peak. अनि त्यो line दिनको मुनि गएको, that is the valley will get. That means by combining this two, this valley and peak and the valley will combine, will get the wave. That means what is wave? Simply, basically, it's a formations of consecutive crest and trough in a particular series. It's called a wave. Now next we have to understand what is this crest and trough. A crest भनेको चाहिँ के हो? Again look at this figure where we'll get the maximum peak. That means the maximum peak is, it's called the crest. Clear? Peak line we call the crest. And what is trough? Trough is the valley where we'll get minimum point. It's called the trough. And when we'll combine these two, that means formation of this consecutive, just look at here the figures. This consecutive, suppose you have this wave, okay, and I have given you the name here A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H and up to I. And this A, B, C, D and E up to E, this is called one wave. Here we'll get the combination of one crest and one trough. Crest is A, B, C is our crest, C, D is our trough. यो दुईटा combine गर्दा we'll get one wave. Clear? This is the first wave. अब यही figures मा अर्को हेर त E, F, G is another crest and E, G, H, I is another trough will get. हैन? अब यो this is the second wave. Wave चाहिँ के हैन रहेछ? It's a combinations of one crest and one trough. That means crest भनेको region of high pressures and that trough is the region of low pressures. अनि peak line we call the peak line हामीले अर्को के भन्दो रहेछ? crest and valley लाई मुनिपट्टिको curve लाई चाहिँ we call the trough. This is very important thing which you have to remember. Now अब यहीँबाट चाहिँ you'll understood what is the characteristics of sound wave. Now first characteristics is wavelength. Now what is wavelength? It's basically the length traveled by the wave. That means यो चाहिँ के रहेछ? It's basically a length traveled by the wave. A wave भनेको हामीलाई याद छ? It's a combination of crest and one crest plus one trough is the wave. अनि त्यसकै distance लाई चाहिँ we call the wavelength. Just look at here. Now from this A, B, C, D up to D up to E, that means this distance is called the wave length. That means here we'll get, in this figures we'll get the two wavelength. Clear? This is called the wavelength. Simple. Now next we have to understand the amplitude. Second characteristics we have amplitude. Amplitude it's also basically the magnitude of disturbance created by the vibrating object. It's also a disturbance creating by the vibrating object. That means we called it no sound for a loud sound for a soft chha. That will identify with that magnitude. यो चाहिँ हामीले केले गर्दा छुट्याउन सक्दो रहेछ, that is due to the magnitude of a wave. That means magnitude. That means loudness if there is high amplitude. For this also, for the better understanding, just look at here. First, suppose the sound is loud. Sound loud छ भने how we identify भन्दा चाहिँ just look at this wave. यो wave हेर त, this peak, यो peak हेर त, यहाँबाट A बाट start हुँदा reaching up to B, it is very high. High मा जाँदैछ नि, and त्यो high मा जाँदा मुनिपट्टि valley मा पनि त्यतिकै curve form गरेर it reaches up to E, isn't it? That means this is the high amplitude. यस्तो amplitude छ भने चाहिँ will get the louder sound. Clear? अनि अर्को चाहिँ soft sound. अर्को हेर, same figure, यो दुईटा हेरेर you can identify it. Soft sound मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ, तिम्रो त्यो peak र valley high हुँदैन. That means कम्ती माथिसम्म गएको हुँदैन. Just look at this figure here also. No, by looking this two, we can easily identify the loudness and the softness of the sound, that is due to the amplitude. Second characteristics will identify it. Clear? Now third characteristics of sound we have, that is the frequency. Before the frequency, you have to understand what is oscillations. Clear? Oscillations भनेको चाहिँ के हो भन्दा oscillation is equal to one wave form. That means we know the wave form, it is formed by one crest and one trough, and that is called the oscillations. And we discussed that this rarefaction and compression is formed between the maximum and the minimum levels. Clear? And that maximum and the minimum ko bichma the rarefaction and the compressions will travel, and that is called the oscillations. Clear? Then we call the oscillation. And oscillation चाहिँ के रहेछ? It's a oscillation is equal to one wave form, and we know the wave is formed by one crest and one trough, and that is called the oscillations. And the frequency means the number of oscillation in 1 second is called frequency. जुन चाहिँ oscillation छ, that the number of कतिवटा oscillation हुन्छ in 1 second, and that is called the frequency. And frequency also, it has low frequency and the high frequency. And what you have to understand here, frequency, by the frequency we can identify the pitch of the sound. We know that suppose there is less oscillations, less will be the frequency. Clear? Less oscillation छ भने, number of oscillation less छ भने frequency will be less. Clear? And the number of oscillation high means frequency is high. It is interrelated. And for the pitch also same. Suppose the oscillation is low, pitch will be low, and the frequency will be low. That means frequency is directly proportional to the number of oscillations. To the number of oscillations, and that means number of oscillations सँग के छ, directly proportional. Frequency high means oscillations बेसी छ. बेसी छ भने frequency high हुन्छ. Oscillation कम्ती छ भने frequency low हुन्छ. अनि that is related with the pitch also. हामीलाई याद छ from the different instrument हामीले different types of sound will hear. कुन चाहिँ हाम्रो कानले रेजिस्ट गर्न सक्छ. हाई पिच हुन्छ, कोही लो पिच हुन्छ. That is all due to the frequency. Frequency high छ भने पिच पनि हाई हुन्छ. Frequency low छ भने पिच पनि के हुँदो रहेछ, लो हुँदो रहेछ. And it is represented by Greek letters nu. Clear? Frequency is represented with nu. Its SI unit is hertz and its symbol is Hz. That means hertz is the SI unit for frequency. And if frequency lay, it will identify the pitch of the sound. And for the amplitude, it will loudness or softness of the sound identify it. Now next we'll have time. Our chart number 4 characteristics we have, that is time period. That means this is the simple time taken to complete one oscillations. That means एउटा क्रिस्ट र एउटा ट्राउसम्म पुग्नुलाई जति टाइम लाग्छ त्यसलाई नै oscillation भन्छ न, त्यसलाई नै we call the time period. This is the simple one. And we know the time period, it is represented by the symbol T, capital letter T, and its SI unit is small letter S. That means second. SI unit की time को, it's a second. Now the relationship between velocity and time. That means, sorry, not velocity, that is the frequency and time सँग के छ भन्दा चाहिँ frequency is inversely proportional to the time. That means time र frequency, it is inversely proportional. That is mu is equal to 1 by t. And last one we have, that is 5 characteristics, that is velocity. That means what is velocity? This is the simple one. Velocity is the speed by which the wave travels. It's its speed. Velocity actually it's its speed by which the wave travels. A wave ले चाहिँ एउटा oscillation गर्नुलाई कति speed मा कुद्छ, that is the velocity. And it is a vector quantity. It is represented by velocity v. It is represented by v. That means velocity equals to distance travel divided by time taken, and its SI unit is meter per second. Now here you have to remember here we'll get the 5 characteristics of sound. Number 1, wavelength. Number 2, amplitude. Number 3, frequency. Number 4, time period. And last one, velocity. This you have to remember. That means this is the very important characteristics of sound.